the tea seller who turned a small cart into a $1 million brand. Many people dream about starting a business, but most of them stop before they even begin. Some say, "I don't have enough money." Others say, "I don't have experience." And many quietly think, "I can't do this alone." But here is the truth that many successful entrepreneurs eventually discover. A great business doesn't always start with big capital, a large team, or a fancy office. Sometimes it begins with something much simpler: an idea, an observation, and the courage to try. Today's story is about a simple tea seller who started with nothing but a small cart on a crowded street. No shop, no employees, no investors. Yet, within a few years, that tiny cart became the beginning of a growing tea brand across the city. And the most surprising part: the secret was not the tea. If you listen carefully until the end, you will discover the one insight that changed everything. One cool morning in a busy town in England, the streets slowly came alive. Office workers hurried toward the train station. Delivery vans rolled past narrow roads. The smell of fresh bread drifted out of small bakeries. Among the crowd walked a man named Arjun. Arjun was not a celebrity entrepreneur. He didn't run a giant company. But for many years, he had quietly studied how small businesses grow. He loved observing street markets, food stalls, and family shops. To him, these places were not just markets. They were living business schools. Every seller had a story. Every stall had a strategy, even if the owner didn't realize it. And sometimes, hidden among ordinary stalls, Arjun would find an idea that could grow into something much bigger. That morning, as he walked along a busy street market, something caught his attention: tea carts. On nearly every corner of the street stood a small tea cart. Some were simple wooden carts with metal kettles. Others had colorful umbrellas and handwritten signs. People in England loved tea. Morning tea before work, tea during lunch breaks, tea in the evening when the air turned cold. But something about these tea carts felt strange. Most of them looked exactly the same. Same kettle, same cheap plastic cups, same faded price board. And yet, something interesting was happening. Some tea carts had long lines of customers. Others stood almost empty. Arjun stopped for a moment and watched. He didn't look at the tea. He looked at the people. Some customers approached confidently. Others hesitated and walked away. This small difference fascinated him. Because in business, small differences often hide big lessons. At the far end of the street, Arjun noticed a small cart that looked quieter than the others. Behind the cart stood a young man, maybe in his late 20s. His name was Ravi. Ravi carefully poured hot tea into cups, adding fresh ginger and cardamom. The smell was incredible. Anyone walking past could easily notice the warm, spicy aroma floating through the air. Arjun decided to try a cup. When he took the first sip, he was surprised. The tea was excellent. Rich flavor, perfect balance of sweetness and spice. But as he stood there drinking, he noticed something strange. Very few customers stopped. In fact, 2 nearby tea carts were much busier. Arjun became curious. Why would such good tea attract so few customers? So he started a conversation. At first, Ravi was shy, but after a few minutes, he began sharing his story. Ravi had moved to the city 2 years earlier. He had saved a little money and bought this small tea cart. At the beginning, He was excited. He believed good tea would naturally attract customers. But things didn't go as he expected. He explained his three biggest problems. First, money was always tight. Every week he had to carefully buy ingredients, tea leaves, milk, sugar, spices. There was almost no extra cash to improve the cart or try new ideas. Second, his number of customers never really increased. Some days were good, but many days were slow. Most people simply walked past his cart. Third, Ravi had no idea how to grow. He often saw stories online about small businesses becoming big brands. But he didn't understand how someone could go from a tiny street cart to something larger. Ravi sighed and looked at the empty street. "I feel like I'm stuck," he said quietly. Arjun listened carefully. Then he asked Ravi a simple question. What if someone had to start from zero? No big money, no team, no investors. What would they do differently? Ravi thought for a moment. He had never really asked himself that question, because every day he was busy just trying to survive. But Arjun believed something important. Before changing a business, you must understand the real problem. So instead of giving advice immediately, he decided to observe. Over the next several days, Arjun returned to the street. Sometimes he stood near Ravi's cart. Sometimes he walked around the market, watching other tea stalls. He listened to conversations. He noticed customer behavior. He paid attention to small details. Slowly, a pattern began to appear. Many people loved tea, but some office workers hesitated before buying from street carts. A few even whispered things like, "I'm not sure if it's clean. Street tea can be risky. I'll just buy coffee from the cafe." Arjun realized something important. The problem was not the taste. It was trust. Customers weren't sure if street tea was hygienic or reliable. That single concern stopped many people from buying. Arjun returned to Ravi and shared his observation. "This is your real challenge," he said. "Not tea quality. Trust." Instead of making expensive changes, Arjun suggested something simple. A small experiment. They cleaned the entire cart carefully. They polished the kettle. They replaced old plastic cups with simple paper cups. Then they created a small handwritten sign. Fresh ginger tea, clean, safe, and made daily. It wasn't fancy, but it sent a message. Then they tested 2 locations. Morning near the office street, where workers passed by quickly. Evening near the market, where people walked more slowly. The first few days were challenging. Some people still ignored the cart. Some customers even complained about the slightly higher price. But Arjun wrote everything down. Every rejection, every comment, every reason. Because in business, feedback is more valuable than comfort. Next, Arjun studied the other tea sellers. He noticed that almost all competitors focused on one thing: cheap tea, lower price. But they ignored 3 important elements: clean presentation, consistent taste, and customer trust. Their carts looked messy. Their cups were random. Sometimes the tea tasted different each day. That was the gap in the market. And where there is a gap, there is opportunity. After several weeks of testing, Ravi made a few improvements. He kept the tea affordable, but the experience changed. He created a small wooden sign, Ravi's Honest Tea. Underneath, a short story explained his journey. A simple tea seller who believes good tea should be clean, fresh, and honest. He kept the cart tidy every morning. The recipe remained exactly the same. Ginger, cardamom, fresh milk. Customers began to notice. Some office workers stopped out of curiosity. Others returned the next day. Slowly, the small cart began to develop something powerful. Reputation. Several months passed. Something interesting began to happen. A few office workers approached Ravi with a request. "Can you deliver tea to our office?" At first Ravi was surprised. He had never thought about delivery. But Arjun saw an opportunity. Instead of opening an expensive shop, they tried something different. Partnership. Ravi trained 2 other small tea vendors. He taught them the same recipe, the same presentation, the same brand message. They sold tea in different areas under the same name. Profits were shared. Costs remained low. The brand slowly expanded across several streets. One evening, Ravi stood behind his cart watching the crowd. The line of customers stretched across the sidewalk. People chatted while waiting for their tea. Some even took photos of the small cart. A few months earlier, Ravi worried every day about survival. Now his tea brand was growing, not because he had more money, but because he understood something most sellers ignored: trust. Arjun smiled as he watched customers leave with warm cups in their hands. Then he said something Ravi would remember forever. The most important lesson is this: customers don't just buy products. They buy trust. And the businesses that understand trust are the ones that grow. Sometimes success does not start with a large company. Sometimes it begins with a small cart on a quiet street and a simple decision to observe, learn, and improve. 3 lessons from this story. Observation is more powerful than capital A. The ability to notice what customers truly worry about can create huge opportunities. Solve the real pain point. Ravi's tea was already good. The real problem was customer trust. Start small and test ideas quickly. Small experiments can reveal powerful business strategies.